Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jake and Milhouse here from ThunderMax. We're about to install our iRIDE active suspension system on a 2021 Roadking. We're going to show you all the install tips on it and go through some different feature explanations throughout the way. Alright guys, super simple install. This is all going to take us about an hour to do. So anybody can do this at home in their garage. We're on a lift right now. You don't have to be on a lift. You can do this on the kickstand. It's really simple. First thing we're going to do is take off both of the saddlebags, the seat, and both the side covers. Alright guys, so we're about to put on the command center. It's going to mount right here on the clutch perch mount. So you'll notice when you get the packaging, it comes with 4 bolts, and they're 2 different lengths here. We have the longer bolts that would be used for a road glide. It's also going to come with spacers. On this application though, we don't have to use those. We're just going to use our standard length bolts here. So what I like to do is I actually like to take 2 zip ties and chain them together around the clutch mount here, and that's just going to hold everything together as we pull these 2 bolts out. I'm going to retain the factory washers here and reuse them for the installation. And here I'm using a T27. All right guys, the next thing we're going to do is just run the command center wire down the handlebars. You'll zip tie this off once we get it all plugged in, just to make a nice clean look. This is going to plug in to the left hand control module on the CAN bus. So this entire system is plug and play. We use these same factory connectors that you're going to get on the bike, and it's just going to plug into that left hand in line in that left hand control module. Alright, so all we're going to do now, I've unplugged the left hand control module. It's the top one on this particular model, and then we're simply just going to plug it, our command center, in line. So click there. And then a click here. And now our command center is hooked up. We'll just button this up with some wire tie. We give you extra room here on the wire, so it allows you to run up to 14-inch risers or bars with this particular wire. So what we'll do now is just tighten all this up with a little zip tie, and we'll be good to go. So now that we've got everything plugged up, we're just going to go ahead, cycle the key on, check to make sure that our connection's good. It's all came up. We're getting data. We can see that the data is there now on the head temp and then on the voltage. So we know that we're good to go. We can kind of move on to the next point. All right guys, the next thing that we're going to do is, because we're going to have to remove the BCM caddy from the side of the bike. And so when we do that, we're going to tilt the BCM. So we don't want to trigger anything on the bike. So what we're going to do is go key on. Then we're going to come over here and remove the 50 amp fuse from the bike and just lay it to the side. And now you can go ahead and turn the key off, and that's going to disable your security. So the next thing up for us to do is we're going to go ahead and use a 1/2 inch and remove the BCM caddy. Not all the way, we're just going to pull it down some, but we just need the clearance room to run our wiring harness. All right, now that we've got that out of the way, we're gonna go ahead and move up top. We're gonna remove the ECM. Go ahead and get it out of our way because we're gonna run our wiring harness through here as well. And this is the new style 2021 ECM here. You just pull this little tab back, it's gonna rock the lever back, and then it'll release the ECM. And we can set it to the side. Now we're just going to simply remove the two ECM caddy bolts and just kind of lay everything over to the side. Same deal, same 1/2 inch that you use to do the caddy on the BCM as well. Guys, so we're just going to kind of rock this forward. It's got a little catch on the front. You just want to make sure that you get over top of that. But literally you can just lay it off to the side without removing anything else, and that'll give you plenty of room there. All right, so now that we've got our wiring harness, you're going to notice that it has a couple of different plugs on it. So the first thing that you're going to see is essentially our fuse block right here. And it's going to have your fuses in it, a breaker, as well as a relay. And then on this particular model, because it's a 21 and the data port has changed, you're going to get a red connector there. This other connector here, this gray 2-wire connector, is unused. So that's going to be, you know, in the future, if we add on any more parts or anything like that, you'll be able to use that for that. Then we have a hot and a ground. And then on the other end, we have the wire that goes to our compressor, and then the wire that goes to the actual control module for the system. And we're going to go ahead and run this now. All right, so we've got the BCM down here. So if you look, there's a really nice little passageway through here. So that's where we're gonna run our compressor wire as well as our control module wire. And then once we get those through, we will come in and run our hot and ground to pick up off the battery. All right, guys, so we know that we've got the 50 amp out of the bike, so we're going to go ahead and connect our hot and our ground. So we don't have to worry about anything arcing out. You want to make sure that you've got a really nice tight connection there. So make sure you tighten everything down. All right, so what we're going to do now is attach the ground. And the ground is actually going to attach to a frame ground that's in front of the battery. That's where we're going to want to attach that ground to. It's a little tight to see with the camera, but you'll be able to see it visually. So next we're just going to take our compressor wire and our control module wire, and we're just going to run them underneath the brake lines here. And then we're going to run them on top of the ABS system and through the back of the frame. All right, so now that we've got that done, we're going to kind of start buttoning everything up and making sure that we've got enough room for all of our wires, and we're going to go ahead and install the iRIDE control module. All right, so I'm going to go ahead, we're going to take the right side shock off. It really doesn't carry a lot of weight. Most of the weight on these bikes is going to be carried by the left side, so we can break this off and it's not going to drop the bike. And now you can take this stock suspension and throw it in the trash. So the next thing that I like to do is go ahead and plug the wire into the control module. It just makes it a little easier than doing it when it's actually mounted. And then it's just going to use 2 Phillips screws after you get it in. You just want to make sure you cinch them down pretty tight. This is going to prevent any water or anything like that getting inside of here. And then once we have that done, we're just going to mount it to the fender support. So it's really nice because there's no drilling or modification to the bike. You literally just clip it in, and it's got locator tabs on it. And then once that's in, we'll run the 2 supplied bolts in. All right, guys, so we've got that done. The next thing up is going to be to install our air spring. So let's talk about the bolts that you're going to use to mount the air spring. If you notice, this one bolt that I'm holding actually is threaded, and it has a small bolt inside of it. What that's for is actually going to be for the load leveling arm. That's where it's going to connect so that the bike always knows what position and ride height that it's in. So you want to make sure that that one goes on the bottom. So we're just going to put a drop of Loctite on there. It comes with the package. You're going to do that for all 4 of your shock bolts when you get ready to install them. So what I like to do is I like to go ahead and get the top one started. You'll notice also that the kit comes with 2 spacers. So you just want to put those on the back side and then start hand threading it in. These air springs are made 100% in-house here at our facility. And they're Teflon coated, impregnated anodized, which is really nice. It's going to keep them super slick on the inside, and they're not going to really have any wear factor there. So next, I want to feed in my bottom bolt, but I don't want to run it all the way in. I just kind of want to, I'm checking it with my finger on the back. So when it gets close to being at the end of that boss there, I just want to kind of stop, and the reason that I'm going to do that is so that we can hook up this load leveling arm. I'm going to go ahead and run the top bolt all the way in. It's just going to be a 3/8 Allen. Once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and move into the load leveling arm, and it's going to be a 5/16. A ratchet wrench helps a ton right here. So you'll just pick up the load leveling arm, run your bolt through, find where it's tapped in the back of the bolt, and just go ahead and start it by hand. You want it snug, but not super snug at this exact moment, because we're going to go ahead and tighten this down. All right, once it's tight, we'll go ahead and move back to the bolt that's on the load leveling arm, get it nice and snug. And just for good measure, we'll flip it over to the open end and double check that it's nice and tight. All right, so next up, we're gonna go ahead and install our air compressor. Once that's done, we'll hook up the air lines, refeed our wire back through, and button up all this that we had opened up a few moments ago. 30 chicken nuggets. Every day.
Salads.
Yeah, salads and some chicken nuggets here and there. All right, guys, so let's talk about our compressor just a little bit. We have 2 different mounting options. This is what we're gonna call our long exhaust mounting bracket. So it's actually gonna mount to the exhaust bracket back here on the muffler. We actually have another bracket as well, so if you're running like a 2-into-1 that's before the bag, it's going to come with a little different one, but you'll be able to see that on our website and choose that when you're ordering. So all we're going to do is we're just going to take our exhaust bolts off here back at the muffler. Make sure to retain both of those bolts because you will be reusing them here in just a second. All right, so now we're just gonna simply slip the bracket of the compressor between the bracket and the muffler. Just kind of feed it in. Pretty simple. And you just wanna line them up. Just kind of get them started. That way you can make adjustments. You don't want the compressor hitting on anything or anything like that. Next thing you want to do after you get those kind of hand tight inside there is just make sure that your plug is kind of out so it's not in your way. And then you're really just wanting to look to make sure that the compressor isn't hitting on anything. It's just going to cause vibrations. So you just want to check kind of your depth of everything, make sure that nothing's rubbing or touching. We've got tons of room on this bike, so we're good to go ahead and tighten these down. So the next thing that you want to do is go ahead and plug your compressor up. Just run your wiring up so that it's tight and kind of out of the way. And then we're going to wire tie this in behind our fender support here. So now that we have that done, what we're gonna do now is we're just gonna go ahead and hook up our air lines so that we know that everything on this side of the bike is complete. Then we'll feed our wires back through, button up both of our caddies, and we'll move to the coilover. So in the kit, you're gonna have 2 air lines. All the fittings are shark bite style fittings, so they just push right in and they're not gonna come out. We also use the all metal DOT fittings here. So we're gonna go ahead and put these in here. You may have to trim them just a little bit. We give you a little extra just in case, you know, every bike is just slightly different. So we give you just a little extra. So if you have to trim them, just make sure that you do a straight cut with a razor blade. Don't tear through them. You want that as clean as possible right there. So when you attach these, you just want to make sure you have a little slack. This compressor is going to move up and down. The bike's going to move up and down. So you just don't want it too tight inside there and causing any pull or anything like that. You just don't want so much slack that the line can possibly hit on something. So just a nice little bit of slack inside there will be perfect. And this is essentially the line. What it does is it runs from the compressor up. This is what pumps up the solenoids in here. And then we're going to connect the line that comes from here into the air spring that allows the air spring to move up and down. Then you just simply push it in and you're good to go. All right guys, so now we're just going to simply run the wires back through, making sure that we get all of our slack out, just keeping it nice and tidy. This has got a better look when you do things like that. And we'll just continue to pull our slack around till we get to the other side there. And then we're going to start buttoning up the caddies here, replacing everything. And once we do that, then we're going to pump up the air spring because everything's going to be operational, and that's going to allow us to get the tension off that other coilover. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get our ECM caddy replaced and back on. Remember, there's a little metal clip in the front that you want to make sure that you get on there, and then you're just going to go ahead and replace those 2 1/2-inch bolts. Go ahead and get your ECM, and you're going to go ahead and replace that. It's going to clip all the way in. Then on this particular style, it's got a lever. Push the lever back in, and you're going to put the ECM back in its home. Now that portion is finished. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to put the BCM back inside of its caddy. And it will clip in. You're going to notice now you've got all your extra wiring out here. That's what we wanted. And we're going to go ahead and put our ECM caddy bolts back in. Again, those are those 1/2 inch bolts. Make sure they're good and snug. All right, so the last step with our wiring harness is plugging it into the data port, which is right here. It's the red connector. It's plugged into kind of a dummy area there. And you're just going to simply slide them together. That's done. Then you'll just want to go through and find a really nice spot to kind of tuck up your extra wiring. So generally here, I won't use a zip tie. I'll just keep this all kind of free flowing from itself in case you need to get in here and unplug anything. You don't want to have to cut off a ton of zip ties. And then you're going to replace your 50 amp fuse now that we've got everything buttoned up. And now the wiring is finished. All right guys, next thing we're going to do is we're going to flip our key switch on. Our command center is going to light up. And now what we're going to do is we're going to lift the rear of the bike to take all the pressure off of this factory coilover that's on here so that we can put the iRIDE coilover on. So how we're going to do that is we're going to click on the 3-line button, that's your menu button. And then we're going to go to iRIDE settings. Then we're going to go to coilover setup. And now it's going to show us the system. And we're going to start putting the air pressure to it. And we just want to go all the way to the top, right? So as high as it'll go. And that looks like that's all we've got in it right now. Once we get the coilover and stuff set up, we'll be able to go higher than this. So now that that's done, we're going to turn the key off and we're going to go ahead and pull this coilover off. So now we're just going to break the stock coilover. We're just going to break it loose. 3/4 inch drive. 3/4 inch socket. And it's going to be a little tight coming off here. But we should have took most of the pressure off when we lifted the bike up.
Now it's a performance bike.
All right guys, now we've got the coilover off here. We're going to go ahead and set up and get ready to put the iRIDE's coilover on. Once we get that done, then we're just going to set up the suspension and we're done. Alright guys, we're going to install the iRIDE coilover now. When it comes shipped to you, it's going to have 2 zip ties there, so we're just going to cut those off right quick. And you'll notice that you get 4 washers with your kit with these bolts. You want one on the outside and one on the inside of this when you're installing it. So now what we're going to do is we're essentially going to use the air spring as a jack, and we're going to raise and lower the bike. Something that I didn't tell you earlier in this video is we don't have a jack underneath this bike, so you can do this on the ground right in your garage, and it's pretty simple, and you just use that air spring to raise and lower the bike so that you can get both of these bosses here to line up. Alright guys, the iRIDE is now installed on the bike, so the next thing that we have to do is we're going to pull it off the lift, and then we're going to set it up for my rider weight. And we're going to do that by adjusting this collar, and we're going to show you step by step. All right guys, the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna adjust the coilover. So you wanna set it up for your rider weight and preference. So right now we're at 3 inches of ride height and we have 49 PSI. What we're wanting to look for is where we want it at our stopped height, but we wanna have 0 to 4 or 5 PSI. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lower the bike down. So what we see here is that I'm at 3/4 of an inch, and that's our ride height on the suspension, but I'm at 0 PSI. Well, I wanted it about 5/8 of an inch at 0 PSI. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna raise the bike up, adjust the coiler on the coilover, the collar on the coilover, and then we'll come back and check it and see where we're at. So I'm gonna go ahead and raise the bike up to take pressure off. And so we turned it 2 or 3 turns. It's kind of you're gonna have to play with it just a little bit to see where you need to be at. And then we're gonna lower the bike all the way back down. And when I bounce up and down, I see that I'm sitting at 5/8 of an inch with 0 PSI. So that's exactly where I want this coilover set up. And the reason that we do that is that you want the least amount of air pressure in that air spring as you're riding. So I know that it's stopped if I'm at 0 PSI. When it builds pressure to raise the bike, then I know that I'm gonna have the lowest amount of air pressure, which is gonna give me the best possible ride. So we've set the coil up. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through and look at our settings, set the settings up of the suspension for myself, and then we're finished. So pretty simple. From this screen, I'm gonna hit the back button. Then I'm gonna go to rear setup. So on rear setup, I'm gonna start at my stopped height. This means this is the height that you're stopped at as you come to a stop. So that's gonna be from 9 miles an hour to 0 miles per hour where the bike's gonna be sitting. I want mine setting at 1/2 inch. So I see it and it looks good. So now I'm gonna move to city. And I'm gonna move my city up. So city is anywhere from 9 miles per hour to whatever this number you have input here. It's gonna stay in that city height. So I like mine to run at about 2 inches there. Then I'm gonna come up to highway. I know a lot of people think when they're looking at the highway height that they want the most suspension travel. And actually you don't wanna be all the way at the top because you still want some cushion, right? So we're gonna bring it down to about 2 5/8, 2 1/2, somewhere in that neighborhood. That's kind of where I like it. And then we're gonna check out our fixed height. So our fixed height is when you're not in active mode. So what that's gonna do is you'll be able to click it into fixed and it'll stay statically in that position and the suspension won't move. So I'm gonna bump that up to 2 1/2. I'm gonna go ahead and take it to 2 5/8, which is pretty high up there, but that's gonna allow us to do some really nice carving or if we wanna load and unload off of a trailer. So now that we have that set up, we're gonna go down to our city to highway height. I personally like mine set at 40, but you can change that. It's gonna move in 5 mile per hour increments. And so you can change that and set it up however you want to for you. And once you ride it a couple of times, you'll know, oh, I would rather it transition at 50 or 55 or 35, whatever that number is for you. So now what we can do is back completely out, go back to our gauge, and we can kind of show you a couple of things about the gauge. If you click over here on this paddle to the far right, that's the iRIDE paddle. And what it's gonna do is it's gonna show you where you're at in your suspension. So this is all those presets. That's our stop, that's our city, and that's our highway. And that white ball will move as it runs up and down and you're hitting those targets. And then it's also gonna show you your rear PSI and your system pressure. System pressure is what's currently housed inside the control module. And then the rear pressure is at 0 because I'm all the way at my stopped height. So to get rid of that, you just click it and it's going to bring back up your RPMs, voltage, and head temp. Now again, this bike doesn't have a ThunderMax on it yet because it is a 2021 and we're still developing that. But once we come out with that product, you'll be able to click here and pull up miles per gallon, manifold pressure, average fuel, horsepower, torque numbers, and your throttle position. If you click the bottom paddle, it's going to pull out your front and rear AFRs. If you click it again, it's going to come up and it's going to show you what your target is, your head temp, cylinder spark timing, and again, your throttle position. So you can watch all this to help you tune in your bike exactly where you want it. And so lots of interesting information there to help you kind of keep an eye on your bike. So if I click this again, it's going to bring up my RPM screen small. I'll click it one more time and it's going to pull it up big. So the other thing that we really need to talk about on the command center is this button at the top that says iRIDE mode. If I click that, it's going to ask me if I want to go to fixed mode. Again, fixed mode means that the bike is not going to actively move up and down as you're riding. It's just going to stay in one static position. So if I'm going to hit OK, and it's going to raise this bike to 2 inches. So now I'm in fixed mode. If I want to switch back to active, I just tap once, tap OK, and it's going to lower the bike all the way back down. All right, guys, there it is. iRIDE suspension installed. Really simple. Took us about an hour to put it on, and that's what it's going to take most people, is right at about an hour. Again, we didn't run a jack. It's all just simple hand tools to put it on. Really simple. Really, it's plug and play. You don't have to drill anything. You don't have to cut any wires. It just plugs in and bolts up, and it's that simple. And it's, you know, it's the best ride that you can get, and it's a fully active suspension for your bike. So, you know, no matter automatic load leveling, so if you're riding one up to load down with luggage, it's going to automatically know that there's a suspension difference there. It's going to adjust it for you. Fully adjustable rebound. So, you know, it's great. It's awesome and easy to install.
If you want to get a hold of us, support at ThunderMax.com. It's the easiest way to get a hold of us, and we'll get right back with you. We appreciate it, guys.
All right, guys, to find out more information about the iRIDE active suspension, you can check it out on our website, ThunderMax.com. And it's going to have all the technical specifications on there, as well as some videos for you to view and watch. Check us out on Instagram at ThunderMaxEFI on Instagram and on Facebook. And then for inquiries on this, you can either check it out on our website, like I said, or contact your local shop and ask them about it, and they can get into contact with us.